Welcome to the Atheist Podcast. I'm Erin.
And I'm Kelley. Atheist is where we will explore American cultural trends through the lenses of a devout theist
And a devout atheist. We will discuss the messiness of being human.
The latest in social science, psychology, and American culture.
And what any of it has to do with Homo sapiens' longtime preoccupation with religion. What's going on, man?
Hey, friend.
In the middle of a bite?
Yeah. So, this is going to be the best episode ever because we are eating through the entire episode. So, if you have an issue with mouth noises, you might want to go back and play last week's episode.
But if you're into, what is that, SMR?
Oh, yeah. ASMR. This might be just what's going to put you to sleep tonight.
You might listen to this twice.
Yeah, you might listen to it twice. So we're doing a couple interviews today, and this morning we interviewed
Professor Ignacio Sanchez Prieto,
who is a Mexican scholar of all kinds of things, including food and film.
Yep.
And what we asked him at the end of the interview was, where should we go for lunch? And so he recommended his favorite Mexican restaurant, which is right down the street. And then, luckily enough, we are interviewing the wonderful Maggie Kelly, the chef extraordinaire, this today. And so we decided, let's grab tacos and from the restaurant
El Molino.
Thank you, Professor.
And
I've just been schooled.
yeah. And let's have a conversation with Maggie about food while we eat great food.
Yeah, highly recommend this place. It's very, very good.
And tell everybody where it is. If you're
So it's
local to St. Louis.
on Kings Highway. You know, if you're south on Kings Highway, basically, past Chippewa. If you're in St. Louis, you might be kind of familiar with that area. But yeah, it's south on Kings Highway.
El Molino
El Molino
del Sureste.
So I guess it's one of, they had their plaque up, which was the top 100 best restaurants in St. Louis from the Post-Dispatch, because he was saying, Ignacio was saying that Ian Frobe had written up the restaurant. So he said he keeps taking everyone he can there because he doesn't want it to close. So he's trying to make sure everybody knows about it.
Well, it's amazing. And so thank you, Ignacio. We are enjoying it for sure. And today we have my dear friend, Maggie Kelly here. Maggie is a chef. She is herself, obviously, a foodie and a food educator. And she is a deeply wonderful, caring, loving, spiritual person who we're going to talk to about the spirituality of food and how food creates connections and creates ritual around families and culture and communities.
Yeah.
So thanks for being here, Mags.
I am honored to be here. I'm probably one of your biggest fans. I love this show so much. I'm like, Kelley, you need to bring Erin over. Yeah. I don't know who this doppelganger is, but I'm getting a little jealous. So we did that.
Yeah, we did that,
which was
and
great.
Maggie cooked for us, and
it was incredible.
And it was we definitely saw God.
I think I put Dave to work that night.
You did. Dave worked.
Made him an honorary chick and said, "Go ahead and cook."
And he did. And that was the other thing I was going to say is Maggie has been probably our number one fan of the podcast and has been such an incredible encourager and supporter. Like, the podcast drops on Monday morning, and I know within a couple hours Maggie's going to be texting me.
Oh my God!
Yeah, and
I got on an airplane. I don't know, in the last year, and I'm a podcast addict. But on the plane, I'm like, I need to hear Kelley right now. And I listened for 2 episodes. It gave me time to catch up. And no, I do. You guys have just really, I was surprised when you first told me what you're doing. And I'm going to give it a shot. But I wouldn't be sending it to other friends and promoting it if I didn't actually resonate with it, and I have. It's awesome.
Yeah, that's so great.
Thanks.
That's so
Maggie.
great.
More of this is needed.
Yeah.
In the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we all need more Maggie Kelly in the world too. So
It depends on who you talk to.
well, if you're talking to me,
Yes.
So I don't want to ask you a question right when you take a bite.
I don't care.
Okay.
It's fine.
So can you tell us just, you have such an interesting kind of a origin story. It's really fascinating. You want to tell us about kind of growing up and what food was like in your family?
I figured you were talking about the farm.
Yeah.
So I grew up in Catawissa, Missouri, Franklin County, the youngest of a very large family. My dad bought the property when I was 2. I have very little memory that precedes the farm. There's like 1 or 2. But being the youngest, my older siblings did not necessarily all grow up on the farm. But when we moved out there, my dad immediately started building the house he actually wanted to raise his family in out there. And then after it was about 30% built, we moved into that house, and our cousins moved into the original house. And my grandmother lived, on the other side of that. So we were all up on this ridge of 200 acres. And we had a pond and creek on both sides of the property, and fields and livestock. We had horses, cows, pigs, chickens.
And your dad wasn't a farmer.
No, he's what we never really belonged out there because Dad was a gentleman farmer. And then when I went to school in St. Louis in high school, nobody had to milk the cow before they drove an hour to school in the morning. So I feel like Bridge and I, my twin sister.
And you have how many siblings?
I'm the youngest of 12 originally.
Oh,
And there are, 8 of us remaining. But growing up, we had Nona. We had Aunt Betty, Uncle John, and their large brood. And then we had those of us who were still living at the farm. My sister Colleen was probably 18 by the time we bought the farm, and literally, not figuratively.
Yeah.
And but Colleen went out and got a horse, and we rode horses, and I would take a bucket down to the field and pick wild berries. I mean, it's really kind of, I can paint the most pastoral scene. It was a lot of work. I didn't know anything else. But my grandmother was not a great cook who always made great food, but she grew great food. And we raised the animals that we ate. And when you grow up, it freaks people out, but I do think it's kind of funny to do that. But when you grow up eating an animal that you named, that you fed, that you went out and brought back from, into the field of safety, so it didn't get hit on the road, or you milked a cow and made butter, or you went down and you picked up walnuts off of the ground and then drove over them for a couple of weeks and then hit them with a hammer and broke them open and gave them to Nona, and she made bad cookies. You're like, how could you do that?
Yeah.
Years later, I went to California. I worked at an amazing restaurant called Zuni and had biscotti. It was right when biscotti was starting to become, very
de rigueur.
Thank you, de rigueur. Yeah, I tasted one and I'm like, oh my God, that's what Nona made. That's how she ruined my black walnuts.
Yeah.
But they were,
it wasn't just bad cookies.
But I remember what they tasted like. And they were good. I just didn't like it as a kid. I wasn't drinking coffee yet.
Yeah.
Nona would make what she called mush. And Dad would say, Nona, what did you cook in the old country? And she'd say, meh, mush. What'd you have for breakfast? Mush.
Yeah.
And what'd you have for lunch? She said, mush. What'd you have for dinner? Leftovers. But I grew up eating mush. And again, same restaurant, Zuni, San Francisco. Celebrated James Beard Award-winning restaurant. Every morning when I worked morning shift, I would go in and start a pot of polenta. Mush.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, I'm imprinted with these things.
Yeah.
And to me, it's peasant food.
Yeah.
It's some of the
Well,
best food.
So your mom was Irish and your mom was Italian and your dad was Irish. So
I'm first generation.
yeah, Irish Italian.
Yeah.
And I think there is kind of that combination, I think, is such an interesting combination in a family, because there is such rich tradition and rich food tradition.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Nona would take the cows up the hill in the spring and bring them back down in the end of the fall in the old country, in Italy, in Domodossola. And Nona would milk the cow, and she probably is the one that taught us how to milk a cow. And her cow is Dotsie, and Dotsie was kind of terrifying, and she was a good sized cow, and I guess was it Dotsie that had horns? I got horned in the stomach. I mean, she off the ground threw me off her horn, and Nona was not afraid of this animal, but she never messed with Nona, who was half my size. She was a little bitty thing. And then when Uncle John and Aunt Betty moved into what was our old house then, because we had built the new house kind of, when we moved, we had no handrail on the second floor when we moved in, but our cousins moved into that house, and I don't know if it was Uncle John or if it was Nona gave Aunt Betty a cow, and she's like, I don't want a cow. She's like, you got all these kids, you got to feed the kids. And so my Aunt Betty reluctantly had to learn how to deal with a cow and raise all these kids and chickens. So, I mean, you grew up around that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's rural life still, if you're lucky.
And meanwhile, your dad, you had a city house.
My grandfather left his home when he died, and Dad bought my uncle out of it. And so when my siblings moved out of the house to go to school, maybe in St. Louis, those of us who went to school in St. Louis, they had a house in St. Louis to go. Yeah.
And when you say went to school, you're like a high school, like because you
college.
Oh, college.
Yeah,
okay.
they didn't let us live on our own in high school.
No, but you would you?
We would stay every Tuesday night. We'd stay in town. And Dad would play volleyball with the boys at St. Rock's every Tuesday night. Go have beers, and yeah.
And you and Bridge would stay overnight,
Right.
But meanwhile, you were getting up, milking the cows, and then driving an hour.
To school.
Driving an hour to school. Yeah. After school sports, go home, milk the cow, do homework, because I didn't take advantage of any time I had during the day to do homework. So yeah, it was a different kind of lifestyle. But Bridge and I kind of feel like we had the experience of people maybe 100 years ago.
Yeah.
At the same time, we were growing up in a more modern world.
Yeah, that's really interesting to
when
have
I'd
that
go
juxtaposition.
To school right. And, I'd go to school and everybody's wearing Papagallo and Madras shorts. And
Papagallo.
I'd be like, I had to milk a cow this morning.
Yeah. So how did that experience and growing up there, then you leave the farm or go to school or start working in restaurants? Like where does the
How did I end up in a restaurant?
Yeah.
Well, I did the smart thing, and I went to business. Well, first I went to California. I took a year off college before gap years were cool.
Yeah.
I ended up staying out there with my sister Mary as a nanny, and for the first time cooked seafood. At that time, certainly my parents were not finding good seafood in St. Louis, and my father didn't know how to cook it. He didn't grow up with it. So I was experiencing California cuisine and loving it. My sister would let me cook anything I wanted because I was cooking for them. So I'd be like, I want to do this. And she'd come home with octopus, or which I no longer like to cook. But because they're smarter than me. But it was an exposure to an entirely different kind of cuisine. And then I came back and started in the business school at Mizzou. And I was working at a restaurant to help pay the bills, and ended up skipping classes to work in the restaurant. And ultimately, I moved back to St. Louis, and I was on my way to switch to the business program here in St. Louis. I was going to move back here, and on my way there, I drove past Forest Park, and I'm like, they have a culinary program.
Yeah.
And I knew it was just like the worst idea. It's not friendly, certainly at that time, and we're talking late 80s. It was not a friendly career for women in the kitchen. And we all know it's a brutal career profession.
We've all watched The Bear.
You didn't make me, but I did binge it this week.
I know. I was like, you got to watch it because we're going to reference it.
Oh, the new season.
Or any of it.
Yeah.
I'm like at the beginning, middle of season 2, but I've fallen asleep at a lot of stuff.
Yeah, we haven't watched the new season. I mean, we watched the whole. I think we saw the whole 2 seasons.
Initially, Dave and I are like, been there, done that, repeatedly for 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I can. Every character resonated with me at different times.
Yeah.
But I also saw people I knew.
Yeah.
In multiple characters at different times. The intensity of it, when they start switching over from this like friction and tension in the kitchen to dignity and supporting each other, and you're no longer playing the blame game, but you're holding each other up. That does happen when you have a good team in the kitchen, and we were very fortunate with that. We were also complete, can I say, assholes at times.
Yeah.
I mean, we were when I first came to Cardwell's, that's what I'm talking about, when Dave and I met, I really wanted to prove myself. It was my first management position. And I was taking on other people's management styles because I hadn't really fully formed my kitchen management styles.
Sure. Mm-hmm. And you do what you learn. Yeah.
But I had been a manager of people for many years before that. Like at Six Flags, like any position.
But the stakes were much higher now.
It was different.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had skin in the game. And I learned the hard way how to be me in the kitchen. It occurred to me that I was actually frightening people. You get so intense, and that's what you see in Bear.
Yeah.
Carmi. You get, whether it's trauma or it's a drive to prove yourself. For some of us, it's you are only as good as your last plate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can put out 1,000 good plates, and we did that at Cardwell's. We put out in the beginning 1,000 plates a day, and you don't think about all the good ones.
Yeah.
You think about the one that came back.
Yeah.
Why'd it come back? Somebody explained to me why this came back. And so there is an intensity, and when you have your blinders on like that, which I did. I slept food. I did the part of the episode where she wakes up, the sous chef, wakes up and writes stuff down.
Yeah.
100% me.
Yeah.
Or I showed you the menu that I wrote from one of the most excellent dining experiences I've ever had. I went back to the hotel room and I had to draw every plate and write down as much as I could of every plate.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't sleep until I did it.
Yeah.
There's a consuming energy. And I, not having been in many other professions, I'm sure I'm not alone. I'm sure it's similar to artists and authors and
very much,
that kind of drive. You want to hold on to it.
Yeah.
You want to remember it. You might want to use it again, or you might just want to come across it down the road.
Yeah.
So I've probably gotten sidetracked.
No.
That's great. But, no, I think having context and for listeners, too, and for me, like that, these are interesting stories for me to hear. I mean, Kelley might know some of these stories, but I think that, getting to hear those sorts of stories helps people sort of understand like who you are, where you've been, what you're.
Well, backing up to the farm a little, I think you're asking what was it that made me go into food. Both of my grandfathers are chefs. I only knew one of them. He was kind of intimidating for a lot of people, but I was so young that I was like, "Ooh, Grandpa's here." Everybody would be like, "Don't run in front of Grandpa." And Bridge and I would go running up and hugging Grandpa. And he made baked Alaska in Catawissa, Missouri, or he'd make something on croûte. When I was a child, he'd make stuffed grape leaves and just really elevated classic
Yeah.
cooking. And then, of course, we grew.
And you also
a
saw
lot of our own
men
food.
cooking too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mom, being the mother of 8,000 children, she just wanted to get dinner on the table, homework done, kids in bed,
Yeah.
and maybe get half an hour's sleep before you do it again. But Daddy, it was a celebration. He got that from his father. And he also managed kitchens more from a financial side than a cooking side as well, because he helped Grandpa balance the books. And when you grow up raising your food, whether it's vegetables or it's beef or it's chicken, you hold it in a different place.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things you said to me when you said you wanted to talk to me about food being sacred,
Mm-hmm.
that is sacred.
Yeah.
When you have a pet pig named Wilhelmina, who was a runt, and she wasn't going to survive, and Mom and Dad let you keep it, and you keep her in the utility room, and you feed her with a bottle. And then that pig grows up, and you don't get to keep her forever.
Yeah.
So you do learn some brutal lessons about how our food comes to our plate.
Yeah.
And Wilhelmina was eventually shipped, and I'm almost like weepy now thinking about it, when she came back. And in little white packages in the fridge. Mom and Dad actually sent us away for 2 weeks so that she'd be in the freezer when we got home and we wouldn't be out looking for her. And I know, I was like, I don't know if I would have handled it that way.
Yeah.
But that is how it was handled.
Yeah.
And we went nuts, ran out of the kitchen and said, we're not eating this.
Yeah.
And then later on, we're like, yeah, but we had bacon for breakfast.
Yeah.
You grew up with some hard truths.
Yeah. Wasn't
Yeah.
there something your dad said around that? I seem to remember a story about.
I'll give you something to cry. No, just kidding.
No.
Give you something to cry about.
No, but there was something about like honoring the animal. Like there was something about eating that made it honoring.
Yes. For me, and I think for a lot of chefs, Dave and I were part of the movement in St. Louis when we started seeing more chefs doing whole animal husbandry and bringing, as a chef, especially in a restaurant where you get attention, and we did, and Dave still does, you have an influence over how people eat.
Yeah.
And so if you put something on the menu that no one's ever had before and it's delicious, they're going to look for it again.
Yeah.
We opened a restaurant called Terrine, and we would only serve seafood that is sustainable, that we believed to be sustainable. I have greater issues with seafood now than I did even then, 20 years later.
And when you say sustainable, you mean
that the species can perpetuate itself.
Okay, got it. Not about like where we are, the fact that we're in the middle of the country or that has to be shipped to us, but
it's all connected.
Yeah,
because we're shipping and flying and using. It's a footprint. It's a carbon footprint to get it here. So the more local you can eat, the more lightly you walk on the earth.
Yeah.
And as chefs, we took it very seriously. We feel very responsible for influencing where people put their money.
Yeah.
But there's an educational factor to that as well. Like, I don't know what to do with this fish I've never heard of. I want halibut, which is $8,000 a pound. But, if you can get something that didn't have to be flown in, but maybe, they started raising it in Missouri ponds.
Yeah.
And what is it? Is it paddlefish is another source for caviar. We're wiping out sturgeon, which is one of the most ancient species of fish.
Yeah.
They can only be harvested so many times before they can no longer bear eggs, meaning they can no longer replicate themselves.
Yeah.
Same with swordfish. They can't, they have to reach a certain size before they can even reproduce. So if you're 100-pound swordfish is large, but if they don't reproduce, and I don't remember what the number is, it's like 270 pounds.
Yeah.
so there's a responsibility there that is on the person that's going to say, this is great, you should eat it, because they will. If you make it good and it is at the zenith of perfection, they're going to look for it. But
like in their own grocery store.
Wherever they,
Yeah.
So you're influencing where people put their money, which is going to influence the market, and money talks. If you don't put your money on, if you put your money on things that are not sustainable, and that's always been a huge issue with Dave and I. And the variety of produce that you can get at a farmer's market compared to going into a grocery store is glorious. Yeah. But you might go there and go, I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do with that.
Yeah.
So people who prepare food can help by showing how to do it.
Yeah.
And so then you get I was there before Food Network was, but then the Food Network comes out, and then all these cooking shows and traveling shows, and now we have a much more savvy consumer.
Yeah.
And we do have, again, 20-something years ago, Seiwell said, I want 10,000 gardens planted in Missouri. And so there was a big push to get people to start growing their own stuff, which is a whole nother forgotten skill. So, it's all kind of connected,
Yeah. Yeah. No,
it gets really, really big.
It does. And in that way too, I mean, kind of going back to the idea or the question about like the sacred aspect of it, right? It's like both that small, like that individual experience, like you with your pig, and then, but also this like globally interconnected experience that are, I mean, it's pretty powerful stuff.
And it's a lot to put on people. We're all busy.
Yeah.
Trying to get the kids dealt with and vacuuming and laundry.
Man, tell you what.
Well, some of us have gotten past a lot of it, Erin.
Yeah.
You're
Erin's
still in the
it.
trenches.
I'm in it.
You're in it. Yeah. So you don't have time to go out and do all that research.
Yeah.
So that's always been a big thing for myself and a lot of my contemporaries. I'm now, what am I? I'm an artifact of a movement that started 30 years ago. With a lot of like-minded people, other chefs who were doing it, people like Julie Ridlon, who never had a restaurant, but started the first farmer's market in St. Louis that was specifically locally grown produce, nothing that was not locally grown.
And how long ago was that?
Before I had kids.
Yeah.
25 years ago.
Yeah.
Every bit of. Yeah.
And the other thing that I've learned from watching you, not that I practice this because I am terrible at all of this, but
stop.
But what I've learned from you, and what I've learned also from my favorite place sitting in a restaurant is sometimes sitting at the bar.
Me too.
And so you can kind of engage with the people, and if you go late at night, you can often engage with the chef or one of the chefs, and that, like you said, kind of utilizing all of it, right? So like nothing goes to waste.
Yeah.
And coming over to your house and sitting in your kitchen, and I see how you use everything, and I look at my kitchen and how much stuff I throw away. That kind of sustainability too, like how, like, do you have advice for anybody about how best to shop for sustainability?
Oh man,
so
that was a big part.
Waste.
Yeah.
That's where I get caught up.
Yeah, a lot of people get caught up that way, and that was a big part of Bridget and I, my twin, again. Maybe you'll meet her when she comes in town.
Yeah.
We did start a food show. We did radio and TV, and we did it because watching food shows, like I'm going to add this now and this, and it's all chopped and pretty and pristine, but you still have to go to the grocery store, do the dishes, and get it to the table, and have knife skills.
And buy 20 things for one dish.
So I guess I cook like I'm cooking for a lot of people in my house, and I honestly usually am, but I do batch cooking and freeze. Whether it's Ziplocs or which I'm trying to use less of, but where you're packaging it for the freezer. And but I guess I used to be better at that off the cuff advice. Dave and I have a shared shopping list when we run out of stuff, an app, and we both have access to what we're out of, and the boys add and subtract things off the list, but we know what we're gonna. First we shop first and then write our menu. And a lot of people do it the other way around.
Yeah.
So we go and find what is the best price and then come home and make it so we're saving money.
And figure out what you can make,
Some things hold longer, right? So you're going to use your more perishable things first. And I never cook for one meal, which isn't entirely true, but I typically cook for multiple meals. If I'm going to make a sandwich for Liam, I'm going to make one for Aiden, but I'm going to make 2 of each, wrap them, and have them in the fridge. So it's grab and go, fast food done slow.
Yeah.
That whole movement of slow food, right?
Yeah.
Not wasting. For me, it's obviously I have sort of built-in skills. I don't have to think about it. Dave and I have we have a running inventory. Both of us, what we have and what that would naturally take you to food-wise.
Yeah.
But getting through the day, have some go-to things that you don't have to think about, right? That are crowd pleasers. When your kids are young, that's easy. But I also, because you know what they're going to eat, and so you don't have to do the homework and come up with something new all the time. And then maybe 1 or 2 meals a week, you're introducing something new, so you're exposing them to something new. But the wash, rinse, repeat of raising kids, if you don't expose them to new foods, and when you do bring those new things in, you also then can bring in cultural aspects of it and bring conversation, which I hope some of us are still sitting at the table. I hope all of us are still sitting at the table at least once a week.
Yeah.
We don't do it all the time, but we, a couple times a week.
Yeah.
Even with my adult sons, we're still at the table.
Yeah.
Whenever we can, sitting together and having conversations, which is again part of it. It's part of that cultural extension of food.
Yeah.
Not wasting, Kelley. I throw things in the freezer before they go bad. I will send them out the door to someone else before they go bad. I also have 2 freezers and 2 refrigerators for 4 people in my house. So I do package, preserve, pickle. I do a lot of that kind of stuff too, but that takes skill and time. And I think my best takeaway is intention.
Yeah.
And when my kids were younger, and I was working weekends when we were running restaurants, so whatever my day off that week was, I would designate a portion of that time to cook for the week.
Yeah.
Where I'm not cooking one thing at a time, I'm cooking everything, and I'm putting it aside, or I'm preparing it in stages. One of my favorite tools in the last few years has been the immersion circulator, a sous vide cooker where the water cooking.
Yeah.
Because thankfully my husband does a lot of the grocery shopping now, and he's much better at it than I am. I'm a seizure kind of, like, I've got the list, this is what I'm getting.
Yeah.
Dave will go in and go, oh, this is a better price, or this would be fun. We've never had this. And he's more fun with the food than I am. Once he gets it home, though, I'm on it.
Yeah.
But the immersion circulator, I will set up the bags on the counter, and then, it's chicken in here, or beef in here, pork in here, whatever it's going to be. And then I add my seasonings, I seal them up, and one by one I cook them.
You cook them all.
And then they're just held in a vacuum sealed bag. So Thursday night I'm doing pork loin, so I'll get all the sides ready or whatever's I'm going to serve with it. But the pork is cooked to perfect temperature. All I have to do is, I will take that out first and let it
come warm a little bit.
We call it tempering it. Yeah, you're taking the chill off it.
Yeah.
All you have to do is sear it in a pan or on the grill.
Yeah.
But that part's ready. I
Yeah.
just have to make a salad
Because
and
to
have the
sous
veg.
vide something just for like a Wednesday night is impossible because it has to
Right.
cook for
Anywhere from 3 hours to 24 hours, depending on what you're
Right.
cooking.
But
But
if you have it all prepped and you
Okay.
sous
you
vide
do it
all,
on Sunday if that's your day where you're hanging out watching football or whatever.
Yeah.
So that I know I've got a few entrees ready to go for the week.
Mhm.
And I come home and like, boys, what do you want tonight? And my children are spoiled and they know it. But that part of it and the thinking part of it is out of my head.
Yeah.
And then you just pull the other things together
See,
to serve
that's
it.
good to know. I bought. My wife loves to cook, and so
I need to meet her.
yeah, I was gonna say you should come over and help because I bought her a sous vide for
Oh, you did?
Christmas, and we've never used it because neither of us have ever used it before. So I don't know. We kind of get like. She loves to bake in particular, so she's always like baking bread. And then we just bought a pizza oven for the deck. So
I definitely need to meet your wife.
Yeah.
We did promote a lot of that, Bridge and I, when we were doing Food Talk and Twice Baked and all that back in the day, because we do I have a soft spot for moms,
Yeah.
single moms in particular, but the mom who has to just, it's one of 1,000 things you have to do.
Yeah.
So when you can kind of collect all of the prep, the heaviest part of it into like 4 or 6 hours, and lucky you, there's 2 of you can get in the kitchen together and do that together. And I mean, I don't want to be Pollyanna about it. I know it's a challenge for so many people. Get a good knife. Get one. I don't care if it's a serrated knife.
Yeah.
Most chefs will be like, no. If it works for you, it works. But, knives go dull and then they're dangerous and then cooking's a chore.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's a serrated chef's knife. That's not what I use. But if that's what works for you, that's what you should use. And, Dave and I will pour a glass of wine. And, for us, it's fun. It's not fun for everyone.
Yeah.
I get that.
Yeah.
I see you.
It's and what I'm finding too, like in retirement,
Rub it in.
is just having more space to think about it.
Yeah.
Well, that's actually because I used to
making
cook
it so much more
I used
pleasant.
to cook a lot more, and I don't. And I mean, I do. I'll I do what I need to do, like with the with kids and all that stuff. But it's I used to enjoy it a lot more, and I used to do it a lot more, and I feel like it's this time. It's the time pressure. That it's like I feel all the time like I just don't have enough hours in the day
Because you don't.
I know
Because your kids are young.
yeah, and so it's like then it just becomes kind of whatever is easy. Now Lauren's schedule, so my wife's an ER doctor, and her schedule's
Pediatric.
mostly adult. She has
okay.
worked on the pediatric side in the past, but she mostly is just on the adult side now. But because her schedule's strange, so sometimes she works on a weekend or sometimes she's working at night. But there's usually like a couple of days during the week during the day that she's off. So she'll go to the store and she'll give it more thought, like, okay, we're gonna like actually like sit down and do dinner, and she has a little bit more space and time where there's like everyone's at school and work.
She's a great cook too.
Yeah, and so she can like I don't know, man. I'm just I feel like I'm struggling a little bit on that at this like juncture of my life with the
community. You've got 7 to how old are your kids? The range? You got 3.
13, 10, and 4.
4, little miss. Okay.
Who wants to help?
Yes.
And you're like, and you want her to help, but you also don't want her to hurt herself. And but she'll get in there. She does, and she enjoys it. But that also presents.
Give her a butternut. Yeah, get her in there.
Yeah,
and get the boys.
Yep.
Get them in there.
Yeah.
Kids love learning everything.
Yep.
And when you're sitting down having a serious conversation, they'll button up. But if you got your hands in flour or they're peeling corn and you're not face to face having some heavy things come up, that is when Bridge and I show up to do the cookies with the kids for Christmas, we're the faves. because we cook with them.
Yeah.
But as a family, if that can be a thing that you guys, I don't know, once a month.
Yeah.
And like, kids, what do you want to learn how to make?
Yeah.
It gives everybody confidence, but it also brings an attitude of wanting to be involved in that.
Yeah.
Hey, set the table.
Yeah.
Pick the green beans,
Mm-hmm.
but and don't be afraid that they're going to break something and make a mess, because they're absolutely going to break something and make a mess.
Yep.
I have a friend who I remember, she was a student of mine, and I remember I was always so impressed with her family because her mom worked, as a lot of moms do, and there were 3 kids in the family, and so mom would prep. So mom would she would have the recipe out, she would have all the stuff available, and then the rule was whoever gets home first starts making the meal.
Love it.
Isn't that good?
Yeah.
Whoever gets home first. If you're home first, the expectation is you take out the recipe, you start cutting the vegetables or peeling the potatoes.
I put everything you need in this grocery bag. It's in the fridge. Get it out. Get busy. I love it. That's great.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean that they're necessarily cooking the whole thing, but then maybe they do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I kind of love that because it also gave just an ownership,
a purpose, also a sense of purpose, like in the like that you're also contributing to
the dignity of it.
Yeah.
Yes.
For children, oh my goodness, they get so proud.
Yeah. Yeah. The 10-year-old in particular, really, actually, he likes to learn how to, he wants to cook, and like if we're making burgers, then he wants to like man the grill. Okay, should I flip it yet? Those they get in. He in particular finds, I think he's really interested in food.
Well, when your kids do that, and you're like, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, buddy.
Yep.
That's delicious.
Yeah. I'm on the other end of that. My kids will cook for me now.
Yeah.
And so you invest that time up front, the rewards.
Yeah.
You reap those rewards hugely.
Yeah.
But you wanted to talk about what is sacred and how food connects to community. I do think that it starts in the home.
Yeah.
And I do think it's one of the greatest gifts you can give someone.
Yeah.
It is my love language.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It is where I worship. It is where I show love. It's my wheelhouse.
Yep.
It's how I can care for my neighbor.
Yep.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I'd follow my brother Robert around. Robert's appetite was legendary. Absolute legend. It is still discussed in my family. When Nona would make pasta after Robert had been working, she'd make a couple of pounds for us and like 3 for Robert. So I would follow him around just waiting for him to be hungry. And I'd be like, I'll go make some. And I'll go, to the kitchen. Yeah. And then he'd usually set up like a rubber snake in the refrigerator that would jump at me when I open it, or he'd have those pop firecrackers.
Yeah.
I'd scream at him, and then I'd make him something to eat.
Yeah.
I
was thinking like in terms of like the creating community and whatnot. So we have a couple of friends who they're not professional chefs, but like they could be. They are that talented at what they do, and they love to host. So they'll do.
I love people like that.
I know, they're the best. And the other piece of that too, as I've reflected on. Just like, knowing them. So we met them when Tommy, who's 13, he was like 5. He was in kindergarten. And because of them, we have like our whole this huge network of friends that like people that we love so deeply and like are like so integral to our lives are a result of just being at their home.
Around their table.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And because of the creativity and the they're just so bold in the things that they would make, and it's like you'd always kind of and then it would inspire Lauren and I to try to we would never be able to like match what they're doing, but we would try to have fun with like we'll host and we'll try to make something that's edible comparatively. No, I mean, Lauren's really talented.
It all comes from a place of love.
Yeah.
And Kelley, her describing this reminds me of the first time that I had dinner at your house.
Oh, I don't. Oh God, I don't remember that
I
at
think
all.
the boys were like in kindergarten.
Yeah, and did
And-
I cook for you?
You guys invited us over.
Oh
And
man,
I'm like, Dave, somebody invited us to dinner at their house, like other parents.
Yeah.
Our kids were in kindergarten, maybe, or
yeah, they're in kindergarten together.
and well, that's how we met.
yeah.
And they're
Oh.
23 now.
Yeah.
And so you are the first family to invite two chefs, knowing full well
Yeah.
who and what we were, and you guys made spaghetti and with tomato sauce. You had wine. You got some nice bread, and it was wonderful. And I think
Yeah.
you did like an iceberg salad, and we were thrilled.
Yeah.
I know.
yeah.
I know.
was
Nobody
just like-
invites us to dinner.
Well, that's I know
I mean, they
because
do now,
but also because it's intimidating, right? That
Yes.
that they know that they're cooking. I mean,
I've been
feel,
called intimidating.
yeah.
I don't even know if it was food related.
Yeah,
It was amazing to me.
Yeah, it's
It was
intimidating sometimes to cook for people that you know are really
Yeah.
good at it. You know,
I
And
was
so-
deeply touched
Aw.
that you guys made spaghetti for us.
Yeah.
I kid.
Aw.
And it was vegetarian. My husband could eat it.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's right. Okay, I have
Do you
memories
remember?
of that.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
And Clark.
Yes. And then the favor was returned. Well, the favor has been returned, 100-fold. But I had surgery once, and Dave and Maggie showed up the morning after my surgery. Maybe it was like 2 days after my surgery. But they came over, and it was like a Sunday morning, and they brought all this food. But they brought over this incredibly beautiful, like loaf of bread, and then they brought over this huge pot of mussels.
No, we cooked them there.
Oh, you cooked the mussels.
Yeah, we came over and cooked
Yeah,
them there.
you cooked the mussels, and then there was like this lemon aioli,
Yep.
and so we just like spread mussels and aioli on this,
And we drank champagne.
and we drank champagne.
And Kelley healed.
And
Yep,
I healed.
yep,
I healed
yep.
very fast. It was amazing.
That's
It was
awesome.
amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was not spaghetti, an iceberg lettuce. It was and
That was one of the best meals I ever had.
oh,
The spaghetti and iceberg.
oh, you're so sweet.
Yeah.
You're so sweet. Well, and I probably didn't know enough to be intimidated at that point, but then
That's how I got my job in San Francisco.
to not know
So
enough.
you
to
didn't
be
know how
yeah.
you should have been
I mean-
intimidated.
I kind of knew,
Yeah.
but I didn't really know, and I'm really glad.
Yeah.
The first day in the job, by then I knew,
Yeah.
and
But then it was too late.
yeah, I cut my hand open while chopping a pile of garlic. I just cut it all,
Oh.
and I was really embarrassed. So I rinsed my hand. This could have been in the bear. So I went over and because it was a significant cut across the entire inside palm of my hand, and I ran it underwater, and then took those trifold cheap
Yeah.
Yeah.
thin paper coarse
Oh,
towels that they have in
gosh,
the
yeah.
kitchen, and I bunched it up, and then I just wrapped my hand
Wrapped
in
it.
masking tape and put on a glove and hoped nobody
No
would
one
notice.
noticed, yeah.
And I went through the day like that. I just did not want her to see that I had cut myself.
Aw.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was kind of rough.
That's a little rough, but I love
Yeah,
that.
and I was making Caesar, hundreds of Caesars. It was the Zuni Caesar. Yeah, it
Oh.
about did me in, but
man. Well, let me ask you this.
Okay.
Food is an art, and I think people understand that probably more now than ever.
Mm-hmm.
And the craft and the skill. But there's also the same way we teach art to children, and we want to pass on that love. I know you've done a lot with food education, both
Mhm.
around sustainability and also just kind of teaching kids, not just your own kids.
yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that and kind of the educational programs and ways that you've kind of used food to better our community?
Well, I was showing you when I got here. It's funny. I haven't thought about this in a long time, but when I went to put some tax receipts in the basement, I came across this folder. I haven't shown Erin yet, but there was a program called Adopt a School. And years ago, started by a man named Rick Bayless, a very well-known chef in Chicago. And we knew Rick. He was doing a lot of the same things in Chicago that we were doing here and vice versa. And he was a friend of Bill Cardwell, my husband's former partner. And we became involved in the Adopt a School program, which was developed by the Chefs Collaborative. It was a sustainable cuisine educational program. We had already been working with farmers, local farmers, telling them what we'd buy if they'd grow it so that they could grow more of fewer things, and developing relationships with farmers. So through this program, each chef that became involved would pick a farmer, and then you would go into a classroom. We went to Edwardsville, Illinois, and we'd go, I think, once a week for 8 weeks. And there were 8 countries, I think, listed, however many weeks in countries it was. The farmer would first discuss with the kids, okay, this is China. This is the climate. This is what grows there.
Yeah.
This is the staple that fed the people of that country for millennia because it grows there. Okay. And so it's less expensive and highest nutrition in the grains for, for sustaining the greatest amount of population. And every country has at least one of their own staples. And I was surprised when, flour was the staple that was chosen in this program for China. But we would cook. First, the farmer would, tell them, and then we'd come forward and say, these are the things you can do with that grain. And then we cook with the kids. They love it. And then Bridge and I were involved with another program with a local chef through the Chef de Cuisine, who started a program that has now become a national program for educating kids in classrooms. That was a whole nother project that we did. And those kids were little. Mm-hmm. They were kids that you didn't want to give a knife. Of course, you can't give kids knives in classrooms, but we did work with, small knives. And, one-on-one supervision. And they eat it up. But I would go into classrooms where kids couldn't identify cauliflower.
Yeah.
Or they didn't understand the difference between carbohydrates and proteins, or maybe they understood that there were different things, but that they did different things in your body.
Yeah.
And that was something that I did want to bring to kids. It's not something necessarily all chefs get involved with at that level, but through the Chefs Collaborative, we had it was laid out for us to package it to kids age appropriately, where it then became something meaningful to them, and maybe they were taking it home to their families. And we were hearing back from parents like, I didn't think they'd eat cauliflower.
Yeah.
No, they do.
Yeah.
It's like, well, they won't eat it if they don't see it.
Yeah.
So kind of bridging that gap and getting kids to connect in that way and be willing to try it.
Yeah.
Baby steps.
Yeah.
They say you have to taste something 50 times, which I never did, but apparently that's the standard that, when kids are younger and resistant. When they were really little, my kids would eat anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then once you get into the preschool and they see what other kids are eating, that palate starts to trim down.
Yeah.
But kids also have a lot more taste buds than we do.
Yeah.
Because we've, all my bad vices have
killed dulled them.
Yeah.
Right.
But also with age, we lose millions of taste buds a year.
Yeah.
And the ones we keep the longest are sweet receptors. So that's why you see a lot of seniors
old men
like ice
and
cream.
their candy.
Interesting.
Well, my dad liked it, when he was young. That was not age related for him.
But oh my gosh, that was my grandfather. That's my dad. Like, you see candy stashed everywhere.
My dad carried butterscotch.
Yeah. But that makes sense. That's funny.
So earlier Kelley was asking you about giving advice, and one of the
and educating. I
yeah,
have another thought there.
but the thing I was wondering, like advice for, is for people who want to create a space in their home where they can kind of build a community or bring in people and entertain in the way that we were kind of describing. Like, what are your tips for people who want to host and they want to be good hosts and they want to create connections and relationships at the table?
Yeah. I would say don't get over your skis.
Okay.
You don't want to try something new when you're hosting people. I think the most important thing is that you're relaxed. My parents, Dad was gregarious and my mother was all business, and Mom never really wanted to entertain because so many kids, so much work. You got to clean the house. It's got to be pretty. It won't be good enough or whatever. And Dad would say, Mama, I'll take care of all of it. And he would entertain whether the house was finished or, I'm not talking clean. I'm talking finished.
Yeah.
Like we would entertain with subfloors and studs, like no drywall.
Yeah.
It's about the generosity of spirit. I think when you invite someone in your home, like Kelley invited me for spaghetti, and there was no embarrassment. There was, we want to spend an evening with you. You want to be relaxed, because nobody's going to come in your home and be relaxed if you're freaking out because you're trying a new recipe or because it's not ready yet. Now, I am perfectly comfortable having you in my home if I haven't cooked yet and cook right in front of you. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to look at a recipe.
Yeah.
I can cook and look at you. I can cut food and look at you at the same time. And it's like breathing for me.
Yeah.
I recommend for people who are nervous about it, have everything ready ahead of time. Or even buy it. I don't even care if you don't cook it.
Yeah.
Cheese boards,
Mm-hmm.
all the rage.
Yeah, that's my go-to. I'm like, oh, there are people coming over.
Girl
Here's
dinner.
Cheese. Yep.
Girl dinner.
That's great.
Yep.
Do that. Maybe make a salad, make a homemade dressing, but make it the day before.
Yeah.
Don't try to pull it off at the last second or when, you really want to be able to be, I'm going to be, be present.
Yeah.
When you have someone in your home, it's about them being in your home. It's not about the food. Even me, in my ego, can say that. I hope you're going to like what I cook. Not everybody likes everything I cook, and I don't even take it personally. If you don't like it, I want to know. I don't care if you don't like it. I want to know if you don't like it so I don't make it again. When you're there, I'll make it when the next guy comes. So be comfortable with it. Have a comfortable amount. Maybe make one thing and have a cheese board or whatever, nuts and olives and flatbreads and baguettes, or maybe grill the bread and then go buy that tin of stewed eggplant from Trader Joe's. I served it that night.
Yeah.
I just like it.
Yeah.
And that's an easy go-to. If it's not in your comfort zone, start small. Yeah. And then you can expand. I like to make this one cocktail that is many steps to make. It's the I probably have made it for you with the vermouth. I might have made it when you guys were there. Yeah. Well, you're not going to make that for a crowd. It's too many steps. You're going to pull out a tonic or a glass of wine or whatever. So, think about how many steps. Have the drinks on ice when they come in.
Yep.
Water. Always serve water. That is one of my biggest gripes. It's not a gripe. I just feel like it's a responsibility of someone who's hosting people in your home to make sure that they are, not just cared for and loved, but safe.
Yeah.
So if you're pouring alcohol or enjoying adult substances, you want to make sure these people are either staying in your house, Ubering home, or you are, as the host, you're in control of how things go. So that's actually, I think, just etiquette wise, I like to make sure that everybody has, people will drink lots of water if you put it in front of them. But when you're in a social atmosphere, we get carried away. We don't pay attention. Yeah. So I will drink whatever's in front of me.
Yeah.
So if I if I only have wine in front of me, I'm going to drink wine.
Yeah.
But if I have a glass of water and maybe I have some, in my house, you're going to get like a slice of lemon or I just picked some herbs in the backyard. I'm throwing that in your water, or a glass of water.
Yeah.
But like paying attention to, a lot of times I'll put the wine in the back and I'll pour the wine, and I never pour 6 ounces. I pour 2 or 3, and then I'll top you off. And then you're just kind of, so I think that's an important part of entertaining. It's not really like elevated culinary, but for me, when I have somebody in my home, I'm not just feeding them.
Yeah.
I do kind of smother the whole experience, as Kelley is here to attest. But yeah, I just stay in your lane, and it's really about the generosity of you.
Yeah.
So that you can be with the people you're having over, and that you're not,
Yeah.
I've definitely changed the way I've done holidays.
Simplify.
I've simplified. I've gotten,
buffet versus plated.
Yeah. And I buy a lot of food instead of make it, so that I can be present, because it's just not fun otherwise.
Yeah.
I don't want to be
Right.
like chaotic. I don't remember exactly what I was going to ask before, so I'm going to probably text you at 3 a.m. and go, this is what it was.
Okay.
But I will just kind of just bring up this kind of overt connection to food and spirituality, and in that I think kind of the primal connection, there's a primal connection between food and religious practice, in that one, in terms of Christianity, right? Like the Last Supper, right? And the fact that, as when we take communion, we break bread, we drink wine, that is the most kind of sacred of rituals, and it involves this kind of embodied practice of
bread
eating.
as the body of Christ, and wine as the blood of Christ.
Yeah.
Certainly that's iconic.
Yeah.
And the ritual around it.
Yeah. And that, that we take it, that it's blessed, that we take it from somebody, that we do it together.
And it is to nourish.
And it is to nourish. And it is to be reminded that that when we eat, we're reminded, right? We're reminded of where we come from, the earth. We're reminded of who came before us.
Yeah.
And so there's so much, and hopefully we're looking forward to, being in that present moment, to being with the people that we care about, and nourishing our bodies for the health of our future.
Yeah.
So there's just this mystical, beautiful element of food. And there's a practice now, and I have a book by a woman who's a pastor who their church practices this, where they don't have an actual church. And what they do is they have a dinner church. And so they have all these small groups all over the city, and they advertise them. And the whole point is, okay, we have service at this address on Saturday night. And whoever you are welcome to come. And the whole thing is, you come, however you are, and the idea of worship in that space is, we all cook this meal together. We all cook it. It's not like people are cooking for you, but you and I were just talking about that. We cook this together, and then we sit down together and we eat together.
Yeah.
And I don't even think you need to talk about anything other than just what's going on.
Companionship.
Yeah. What's going on in your life?
You're familiar with companion food.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Josh Allen.
I bought his house. I live in his.
Oh,
old-
that's
You're
right.
kidding. Oh my gosh. I've known Josh since forever. One to break bread with.
Yeah.
That's why he calls it companion.
Yeah.
That's what companion is someone to break bread with. And that just evokes 1,000 memories, and the ritual of coming together. I should have sent it to you too. I went to Kansas City this weekend with my husband to a luau It's an annual tiki putt-putt pool party in Kansas City. And this year, our fearless leader, Doug, decided he wanted to do a pig roast because his dad wanted a pig roast. And I don't think his dad they'd never done one. Enter Dave and I, because we used to do pig roasts, not every year, but many, many pig roasts at the farm.
Yeah.
Again, pigs we raised.
Yeah.
Pigs we knew.
Yeah.
And then we would have between 100 and 200 people, as many as 200 people. And we even did it for a wedding of 300 people. So, lots of pig roasts. Talk about community and coming together and just the visceral.
Yeah.
Some people see it and go, some pig.
Yeah.
And, I will cook it, I will eat it, I will cut it, but I will never look at it without, this animal did not sacrifice for you.
Mm-hmm.
There was no agency on the part of the pig.
Right.
There is something brutal in that.
Yeah.
And yet it is something that is an honored ritual of these large cooking. Every culture has that kind of, throughout the world, of these large group ritual cooking where the whole day, tamales, right? The women typically, sometimes the men, but this where you sit down and it's a labor of love and you're not just sitting there passively receiving. You are actively engaged. Tamales, that's a good one. You can make those in big batches and freeze them.
Okay. All
yeah,
right.
that's a good family project. But that the intention of coming together in that way.
Yeah.
And I'm very offended by a cavalier attitude towards that.
Yeah.
Even if it can even be produce.
Yeah.
Intention. Somebody planted it, somebody picked it, somebody tended it, somebody picked it up and took it to where you could buy it. Or maybe it changed hands a couple of times.
Yep.
That's resources.
Yeah.
That's so as we consume resources, all of that went into something so that I could sustain myself.
Yeah.
So 2 things quick. And because I remembered. So before
I could tell you remembered.
Before it's gone.
Yes.
So first, in terms of that, have you read Braiding Sweetgrass?
No.
Okay.
But I need to.
Yeah, you need to read that, and then we should have you back on, and we should talk about that book because that is the quintessential book of kind of spirit. It's Native American spirituality and food, and the woman who wrote
Native American,
and the woman who wrote it is also a scientist. So
excellent.
Yeah, it's just it's beautiful. But second, this is what I was gonna say before. Right now, so you know how there's like seasons in the church calendar. Like there's Lent and Advent and stuff. So in the Episcopal Church right now, we're in the season of creation. And it's about like the fostering an appreciation for and a love of pretty much like the garden and things that grow. And so we were talking about this, some friends of mine and I. And so a lot of the people in this group I meet with, a couple of them are pastors, and so they've made their yards like you have in your home. They've made their yards mostly gardens, food gardens for their community, so that anybody in the community can walk by and help work on it and also get food from it.
Mm-hmm.
And but as we were talking about it, I thought, in terms of spiritual practice, there is no greater kind of symbol for a process of spiritual practice than the garden. You put this work in, you plant a seed, it grows, and then it grows, and it's so abundant, usually.
If you're lucky.
Mm-hmm. That you can't consume it all yourself. You have to share it.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
And there's the sense that I think with spiritual practice, or with any kind of generosity, right?
Right.
Like as soon as like the economy of love, the economy of spirituality is if you hoard something, you get cut off from receiving anything, right? And yet,
Well, part of that, if I can jump in.
yeah,
So like the community garden,
yeah,
when you plant that seed and you've planted hundreds of seeds and multiple different things, they all need different things,
Yeah.
right? The different plants need different attendants.
yes,
One person by themselves can be
Cannot-
overwhelmed,
yeah,
but multiple people,
yep,
and now
Yeah.
it's easy
yeah,
and it's fun, and you
Yeah.
might run into them out there
Yep.
yep,
when
Yep.
you're out there picking, watering,
Mhm.
planting, whatever. Or I'm sick, I can't get out there.
yep.
But you've already shared this space, and they can hold you up until you can get back. It's
Yes.
that is
There's a kind of a
absolutely.
communion of the saints, right?
Yeah.
In like building a garden, and then yeah, absolutely, and then the idea of that it's you have to share it. Like this is the time of year where everybody's like coming home from work with
and
like
finding their car full of zucchini.
yeah. Everybody's got zucchini and tomatoes.
That's
and,
why you lock your cars in the country.
yeah, so that nobody puts boxes of zucchini in your car. Guess we're eating zucchini again tonight.
That's hilarious.
But yeah, and so,
so good.
I love that. Just it's not even a metaphor.
No.
It's just real. It's
Yeah.
just true.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I love that. I
Yeah.
love that. Yeah, I think it takes us back to I didn't realize that that's why companion was called companion, but
One to break bread
yeah,
with.
that's
Mhm.
that's awesome. I love that, which is kind of what we're doing here.
yeah. What we've been doing, and this food, Ignacio, has been delicious. Thank
Yes.
you,
Yes.
and I hope you guys haven't been too burdened with our mouth noises. But should we end with
With a
one good crunch?
I think so.
Okay, ready?
Ready?
1, 2, 3. Thanks,
Now we
Maggie.
need some cerveza.
Yeah, we do.
I was offered cerveza.
Thanks, Maggie.
Thanks, guys.
A huge heartfelt thank you to all of our listeners. Some of you joined us a year ago, some of you joined us recently, but all of you are helping us grow the show. Thank you so much.
Atheist is still advertising free, sponsor free, and available for free to everyone. Lots of podcasts have big production teams. Our team is just 3 friends working together to make something we hope puts good into the world and brings value to your life.
But we always need your help. Please spread the word and share the show. All of our social links and other ways to support the show are available on atheistpodcast.com.
Atheist is produced by Justin Seiwell of Trend Media, STL. Thank you for listening, and keep looking for connection.